No one devalues you more than you do. Not the ones who left, not the ones who forgot, not the ones who never saw you. It's you. In the way you stay quiet when you should speak. In the way you shrink when your name is called. In the way you apologize for taking up space. They don't have to tear you down. You do it every time you say, "I'm fine," when you're bleeding. Every time you overgive and call it kindness. Every time you betray your own sense just to be accepted. The Stoics never asked to be seen, but they never hid. They walked in silence, but they walked upright. And you were never meant to crawl just to keep the room calm. You were built to hold. And somewhere inside, you still remember that. It's not loud, it's hidden in small choices. You don't wake up one day feeling worthless. It happens quietly, in the way you say yes when you wanted to say no. In the way you explain yourself just to be understood. In the way you lower your eyes when they should have been steady. The Stoics paid attention to what most ignored. Not just actions, but patterns. Not just mistakes, but moments of silence when the soul wanted to speak. You want to know if you're undervaluing yourself? Don't look at your words. Look at your boundaries, your posture, your habits when no one's clapping. Because it's never a shout. It's a pattern of shrinking that becomes permanent if you let it. And it starts small. Always small. You stay where you're not seen, not respected, not valued, not even noticed. But you stay, out of habit, out of fear, out of the lie that at least it's something. The Stoics never begged for recognition, but they never stayed invisible either. They showed up where they were useful, not where they were tolerated. And when the room stopped reflecting their value, they left. Quietly, clearly. You shrink your tone. You soften your steps. You wear invisibility like safety, but it's not. It's erosion, one boundary at a time, one silence at a time. You're not meant to fade, you're meant to stand. And if they can't see that, walk until the next room feels your shape before you even speak. You say sorry for being who you are. Sorry for speaking up. Sorry for needing space. Sorry for not agreeing. Sorry for feeling too much or not enough. But what are you really apologizing for? Existing? Thinking clearly? Drawing a line? The Stoics didn't say sorry for holding their shape. They stood in truth. Even when it didn't please. Even when it didn't land soft. Because integrity doesn't apologize for presence. You think it's politeness, but it's pattern. A reflex. To shrink, to bend, to vanish without leaving. Every time you say sorry for being clear, you confirm a lie that you're too much. You're not. You've just been made to believe that silence is safer than self. It's not. You ignore your own signals. You feel the tension. You feel the misalignment. You feel the yes trying to say no. But you override it, smile through it, nod anyway, and slowly you stop trusting your own system. The Stoics didn't run from discomfort. They listened to it, observed it, used it as data, because inner conflict isn't weakness, it's feedback. But you treat discomfort like guilt. You mute the signals, you trade them for approval, and in doing that, you disconnect from the one compass that never lies. Your body knows, your gut knows, your silence knows. You just stopped asking. And when you stop asking, you start wandering, and no one who wanders too far remembers how to come back. You celebrate others, but shrink when it's your turn. You clap the loudest, you show up, you post, you praise. But when the spotlight tilts towards you, you flinch, you deflect, you joke, you downplay what took you years to build. The Stoics weren't loud, but they never hid from honor. They knew that accepting recognition is not arrogance, it's agreement with your effort. You think it's humility to stay small. It's not. It's self-erasure. Because every time you whisper through a moment meant for standing, you teach your soul that it doesn't belong in light. Celebrate them? Yes. But don't forget to stand when the moment asks you to. Because if you keep stepping back, you'll teach the world that you don't deserve a place in the front. And eventually, they'll believe it. You chase approval to feel enough. You wait for the like, the reply, the nod, the echo. You shift your tone to sound agreeable. You rewrite your truth so it doesn't make them uncomfortable. The Stoics didn't bend to be liked. They became so clear that approval became irrelevant. You think agreement means acceptance. It doesn't. Approval is temporary. Alignment is eternal. Every time you chase a reaction, you give them control over your peace, over your worth, over your posture. You want to stop undervaluing yourself? Then stop outsourcing your value to people who don't even know who they are. Say it straight, stand in it, and let the silence that follows reveal who's real. Because the ones who can't handle your clarity were never meant to witness your growth. You keep giving from an empty place. You show up, you offer, you carry, you pour. Even when there's nothing left, the Stoics gave from fullness, not from guilt, not from fear, not to earn a place. But you give to keep the peace, to hold the bond, to feel needed, even as you drain, and then wonder why you're tired, why they don't thank you, why it never feels like enough. Because you can't give clarity from a fogged mind. You can't give presence from a restless heart. You can't give power from a place that's barely holding on. You want to be valued? Then stop offering your energy like it costs nothing. Protect it, guard it, rebuild it, and give only when the act itself doesn't make you disappear. You can't hold a compliment. They say you did well. You say it was nothing. They admire your work. You deflect. They notice your growth. You laugh it off. But why? The Stoics didn't beg for praise. But when it came, they held it. Not as a trophy, as feedback, as proof that the code was working. But you swat it away like danger, like accepting it would expose you, like being seen makes you vulnerable. It doesn't. It makes you accountable. To rise, to stay aligned, to own what you've built. You want to stop undervaluing yourself? Then stop treating recognition like an accident. It's not luck. It's labor. It's real. So next time they see you, don't hide behind humility. Just nod and hold it. You trust others' opinions over your own. You know what you saw, what you felt, what you meant, but the moment they question it, you shrink. You start editing, rewriting, making their view louder than your own memory. The Stoics didn't hand over their judgment. They trained it, sharpened it, trusted it more than any passing voice. But you treat outside opinions like truth, like gospel, like the mirror is only real when someone else holds it. And every time you do that, you lose track of what's real for you. Not because you're wrong, but because you stopped listening. You want to reclaim your value? Start with this. What you see is valid. What you feel is data. What you know is enough. Stop needing them to confirm what's already clear inside you. You fear making the wrong choice, so you make none. You wait, you overthink, you gather more opinions, more time, more signs, but no decision is still a decision. The Stoics acted, not recklessly but decisively. Because motion is clarity, and stagnation, it's erosion. You think avoiding risk keeps you safe, but what it really keeps you from is yourself. From knowing, from failing, from building the version of you that only shows up through movement. You undervalue yourself every time you freeze at the edge of something real. Not because you're incapable, but because you've confused uncertainty with danger. It's not. It's just the sound of growth knocking. So answer. You replay mistakes more than you remember wins. The slip, the crack, the word you wish you took back. You loop it, you live in it, you let it define you. But ask yourself this. When was the last time you replayed a victory with the same intensity? The Stoics didn't ignore their faults. They confronted them, learned from them, and then they moved. Because dragging shame into every room isn't discipline. It's self-sabotage. You say you're humble, but what if you're just unfair to your own growth? You remember your lowest moment like scripture, but forget your strongest days like static. You want to stop undervaluing yourself? Then treat your wins like they matter. Not as ego, but as evidence of who you're becoming. Because the more you replay failure, the more you forget you've already risen before. You measure your worth against a curated world. Scroll, compare, shrink, Their highlight becomes your standard, their filter becomes your failure, and your life starts feeling like a mistake. But here's what the Stoics knew. Reality isn't on display. It's in the details. The unseen, the unposted, the parts that don't trend but build something true. You undervalue yourself every time you let illusion outweigh evidence. You forget the hours you've put in, the storms you've held through, the nights you stood firm when no one was watching. And for what? A number? A story? A snapshot of someone else's best 1%? That's not clarity. That's self-erasure. You want to rise? Then stop measuring your depth with someone else's surface. And remember, what they show has nothing to do with what you are. You put off growth because you think you're not worth it. You delay the book, the gym, the boundary, the rebuild, not because you can't, but because deep down you think people like you don't get there. You call it not the right time. You call it preparing. But it's something else. It's doubt, wearing discipline like a mask. The Stoics didn't wait for permission. They moved from duty. Not because they were sure, but because they refused to live below their standard. You want to stop undervaluing yourself? Then stop hesitating when growth calls your name. Start the hard thing. Say the real thing. Build the version of you that your younger self would have needed to see. And when the doubt shows up, don't argue with it, just act. Because you don't rise by believing you're worthy. You rise by behaving like it. You seek validation for what should have been self-trust. You already knew, but you asked anyway. You already felt it. But you waited for someone to confirm, and when they didn't, you doubted. The Stoics didn't move from approval, they moved from code, from internal clarity, from principle, not popularity. But you post, then check, speak, then flinch, decide, then second guess because someone didn't clap. You call it feedback. But really, you're just outsourcing your authority. You know what that is? It's self-abandonment wearing strategy. You want to stop undervaluing yourself? Then stop needing someone else to say yes to what you already knew was true. Hold the line, without applause, without reassurance. Because when you learn to move without external confirmation, you become undeniable. You weren't born to shrink. You were built to stand, not to please, not to impress, not to fit what they expect. You were built to hold your shape when the world pulls, to speak without checking who's listening, to walk without needing a map made by others. The Stoics didn't rise by shouting, they rose by not lowering their standards, their pace, their voice. And you've bent enough, you faded enough. You've asked for proof when all along you were the proof. Now stand, not louder, just straighter. Because the most dangerous thing you can do is finally remember who you are.